Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Elementary. I will go ahead and preface this at the beginning by saying, I do apologize if this just kind of ends up being kind of a low energy episode or whatever, because it I think I'm kind of coming down with something, but nevertheless, moving into the episode, obviously the overall case dealt with this dude named Will, who's the worm dude, worm hunter. Basically, he kind of studied worms and stuff like that, and it's this very interesting thing where it's like, oh yeah, all the ladies he was sleeping with and having affairs with and such, were all women he later on named worms after. It's kind of sweet in a certain light, because it seems like a lot of them were probably, or at least some of them were known about the fact is, it's like, oh yeah, this is just kind of like a casual thing. It wasn't anything serious. I mean, obviously it didn't apply to all of them, because there was at least one that was like, oh, he named me after so-and-so. It's like, they mate for life, and she's just breaking down, because I love like the scene opens up, and it's just kind of like showing all the ladies sitting there in the chairs, and you just hear, like her wailing like that, and I just thought that was kind of neat. So obviously, like, she was very heartbroken. You just have like Sherlock, Watson, and Belle just standing. Like, Belle and Watson are staring at her, just kind of like, That's also interesting too. Like, maybe I think I remember it, but I don't remember it that well. The fact is that Sherlock actually named a honeybee after Watson. I feel like I remember that, but I don't 100% remember. But I was like, oh, that's super sweet of him. But basically, it turns out, like, obviously, one of the women he was sleeping with, Becca, who's married, her husband, Donnie, found out and shot him. But it turns out, but it's like, no, what the ME discovered what killed him was the fact is he was stabbed. But it's like, oh, no, he was shot. Donnie wasn't lying. Donnie did shoot him, but Donnie didn't kill him, which is like, oh, that's interesting. Because it turns out that this is all about, the fact is that Will was doing research into, like, body armor. That's how he survived the 3 shots. Basically, he's been working with this company named Hoyt. Interestingly enough, is run by the actor who played Deacon in King of Queens. He's been in a lot of other things. It's interesting because he talks about the fact is, like, oh, my alibi for this murder is the fact is that I was with someone that wasn't my wife and went to Niagara Falls, which is interesting because if you're watching the center this season, he's in the center. He's kind of like the prosecutor, I guess, the aide, the district attorney, like whatever position he's in, and that kind of deals with Niagara Falls, just because that kind of ends up being like destination for like characters involved in it. Like, obviously, I'm not going to go too deep into it. I just think it's kind of interesting. He brings up Niagara Falls in this, and he's in the show where that, it's just kind of an interesting thing. I just felt like kind of commenting on. But I thought it was kind of interesting how the case developed in that sense, because it's like, okay, so who's the one behind all this? There's a death threat emails, which turned out not to be anything, because that ended up being someone who's trying to buy the company Hoyt. Turns out that was just someone like kind of putting a virus out there, trying to get access to everything that Will had. And turns out Hoyt has nothing, because Will's research didn't turn out that well. And it's also like, oh, in actuality, he didn't build this suit. Not suit, this hoodie, this, body armored hoodie. He didn't actually make it. He actually stole it from someone. It's just a whole complicated mess. I like that when Sherlock got all those, what are they called? Those like fleshy kind of dummies from all these different people, because like depending on how those bodies deal with the damage would be able to, from the gunshots. And I love the whole like Sherlock having to convince Marcus it's okay. He's like, it seems a little unfair. It's like, okay, I get it. You're so amazing and great. Belle, like, you feel like it's unfair. It's like, we're not here to test your skills or anything. He's like, well, I'm still do it and do it good anyway. It's like, I love that. That just kind of, it's just like his marksmanship is like, no, it seems too easy, but it's like, no, we're not here testing your skills. We're here just trying to recreate the crime scene to find out like which materials which the dummies kind of matches the material needed to stop the bullet in the same regards that happened with Will's situation. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. I don't see those a lot. Like, the only thing I always associate those with is like the TV show The Deadliest Warrior, where they kind of like did the whole thing of like run simulations on like, oh, what 2 particular warriors would go head to head, like, oh, how would a samurai fare against a knight, something like that. I thought, pretty cool show from a while back, and it just kind of made me think of that, because that's like one of the few things I've ever seen that have utilized those things. Like I said, I don't know the proper name for them, so I'm referring to them as dummies, but I know that's not what they're naturally called. But I also appreciate how this kind of all went back around and led to Sefi, because it turns out like one of the dudes that the lab they ended up going to, Scott, he was having sex with her there at the lab, and the only reason why Charlotte knows, he's like, well, he's sniffing the chair a little bit, but also he's like, well, you don't need to even worry about like the samples and the DNA and stuff like that. He's like, you just look at the pattern on like the ring, like the scratch marks on the floor from the chair. It's like, yeah, that's obviously something related to sex. I thought that was kind of neat how that was kind of undone and stuff like that, because she had stole the spiders from that lab when they were kind of doing their thing. I am curious to see Sherlock had talked about still investing in the company anyway, because he's like, yeah, us trying to find out whether you're a murderer or not, just think of that as further vetting. So, because like the fact is the work they were doing was very life-saving. It turns out that obviously their spiders are the ones that were behind the hoodie, except I thought, and it was so fascinating, it turns out the spiders in particular they're using, their web is super strong and super good, but the problem is they're cannibals, so you can't like get them to reproduce, and the amount of spiders you would need to compensate for that, like you wouldn't be able to just breed them all at once, because if they were together they would just eat each other, and it's just like, so they have to keep them in separate cages. I thought that was kind of fascinating, but it turns out Sefi had found a way to kind of go past the cannibalistic stuff. Is like she basically took, I think, stuff from the spiders and put it in silkworms, so that basically when they spun their cocoons, they kind of compensated for the fact is of not having a whole bunch of those other spiders. So I thought that was kind of pretty neat. But Charlotte noticed the fact is that her plants were dying and stuff like that. The plants she was feeding them, so they weren't getting, the nutrients they need, so they were dying out. So that was kind of what set them on the right path to figuring this out, because it turns out Hoyt and Will both sabotaged her because they found out she was getting so close to this thing. So it's kind of sad too, because like Sefi had actually gone there to save him because she heard the gunshot. She's like, oh my God, and look, my vest is what saved him. Oh my God, that's so awesome. Because she'd actually said it herself. She's like, he didn't actually steal it from me. I gave it to him for the purposes, because she heard about the death threats and stuff like that, which is interesting because it turns out the death threats were just kind of a fault. So, which is interesting because the lady was like, oh yeah, because people are very reluctant nowadays to openly, if they don't know who it is. But it's like, oh, a death threat, like you're gonna take that serious and look into it. So obviously you're gonna check the email. So I thought that was kind of a fascinating thing. Just like, oh yeah, it's kind of interesting because it kind of plays an element into the episode too, like the whole like human nature in certain regards, like how a human would respond to certain situations. Because she talks about the fact is like obviously like certain things are just kind of like there in people, like lust and rage. It all kind of comes from the same place, for survival, in a sense of willing to cut down anyone that gets in the way of what you want most. Essentially, is what Sefi was kind of getting at. Because she found out, it's like, oh yeah, but she's like, oh, he's alive, and it's thanks to my vest, my hoodie, and then she looked and found out that he was the one behind, and that's what made her kill him. Which is interesting, once again, because it's like she's so cool, calm, and collected even at the beginning of the episode. Like, yeah, obviously I wouldn't kill Will, because the fact of the matter is, like, I didn't have that attachment to him in the sense of like, oh, maybe it's a jilted lover. It's like, oh, he's got all these different lovers and stuff like that. That's the reason why he got killed, but obviously it turned out not to be the case. It's just kind of like he sabotaged her life's work, So... I mean, but to be fair, everyone was kind of shady around this, because they were all trying to get like these contracts with certain people. Like she was getting a contract with the government, so it's like it's all about getting paid in these regards. So that was just kind of interesting. And on the other side of the episode, we have Sherlock being brought in by his doctor. It's like, oh no, your condition's good and stuff like that. But it's like, yeah, we wanted to warn you that your files were stolen. So Sherlock looks into that, getting Mason's help. And I love that whole situation, that Mason's big thing for him is like, okay, you do this for me, I'll do these 2 favors for you, looking into the main case, and obviously like his little side thing about his missing file. And it turns out like well, that was later on, but like the fact is that like Mason like oh, this missile hit me in the game, I want to find out where it came from. Turns out it's like, and like he explained everything, and then Watson's like, that's not that complicated. Yeah, the missile came from his girlfriend. Oh, and it's like, we never found out why she shot him. Maybe they were just having a fight that time or something like that. It's like later on, because even Sherlock calls him out later on and calling his phone. It's like, dude, I know you're playing that game. I saw you logged in with that treacherous girlfriend of yours. You still owe me part of the bargain. You only helped with half of it. Call me back, or I'm gonna log in that game and I'm basically gonna make your life a living hell. You're not gonna want that, essentially. So I thought that was kind of pretty neat. But what it's all like, because what Sherlock initially found his secret identity, well, not his secret identity, I don't know why he said that. his identity was by this dude who's just using it to get work. And Sherlock's like, I'm not going to turn you in, dude. Got the URL from the the dark web. Sorry, I'm kind of just, like I said, a little rundown, so I don't think I'm not firing going all cylinders right now, so I do apologize. On the dark web, and but the whole thing about like Sherlock's like, no, you can keep my identity. I get it. He's like, I would forewarn you. He's like, I mean, if I were you, I'd get another one because the last thing I want is for you to get kidnapped or beaten or harmed or killed because you had my name. Because keeping his name leads to having a lot of animosity. A lot of people hate him. And you have the dude being like, when he was hearing Sherlock saying all those warnings and stuff, like the dude's like, wait, what the hell? Like, I just got somebody's identity. I didn't know I got someone's serious identity like that. It's like, I gotta change it. Like, he didn't say it, but you can definitely tell the look on his face. It's like, I gotta change that immediately. So in retrospect, I kind of figured it would be who you thought it would be. Like, from the very beginning, I was like, who takes such an interest in Sherlock? Like, going after other files and just happening to steal his? Like, what other reason would you have for that but to, it has to be Michael. But it didn't click into my head until, like, Sherlock explained it. I was like, why would he take your file? Like, is it just him being nosy, trying to learn? I thought it was just, just trying to learn everything he can about you because he doesn't really know everything about you. I thought that's what it was about. But it's like, in the long run, it's like, no, because it was him doing his checkup. It's like, oh, so how is Sherlock doing? It's like, oh, your condition is doing well? And Sherlock's like, yeah, the fact of the matter, he knows that my condition is getting better. So the only reason why he stopped killing was for the purposes of giving me time to recover. Now that he knows that I'm better, he's coming back and he's going to start killing again. So I thought it was kind of interesting. Once again, like, I thought, I like that. The fact is, like, oh, you had this main antagonist kind of set up, but he's kind of sitting under the back burner, and now you're kind of bringing him back, Like I said, I'm super surprised that Sherlock's condition didn't get worsened. Like I said, the only time he hallucinated was last season, and I guess because they did that, they weren't going to do too much of it this season because they already dealt with it. Now it's kind of out in the open, I guess. But I thought they would play around with that a little bit more. To be fair, once again, like, we don't know. It might escalate, get a little worse later in the season. Like, this whole Michael thing might end up sending him kind of spiraling. It might end up kind of setting him back a little bit in his recovery process and stuff like that. So we'll have to see. Like I said, for now, he's doing good and recovering, but who knows what could end up happening in the future. Like, maybe get hit again or something, and just circumstances might set everything off again, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see. Side note, I'm sure it's probably getting caught up in the recording, so I do apologize. I'm pretty sure it's like a smoke detector is going on. Probably like need to change the batteries or something to it. So if you constantly hear beeping in the background, I do apologize about that. I just can't do much about it right now. Like I said, just not really my moment, my time, firing on all cylinders once again. Not doing that. Anyway, so I think that's pretty neat. And I think that was kind of a nice introduction to kind of slide Michael back into the story too, because it's not just like, oh, there's a murder and he's behind it. It's like, no, like, it's just kind of like this buildup of like, boom, it's him. He's stepping back into the story. So also, let's not forget, there is the whole Moreland situation. Like I said, I'm curious to see whether that really becomes a bigger thing this season. Like I said, it might kind of blend in with the Michael thing. Like, the Michael thing might be kind of like forefront of later parts of the season, but then like maybe even further nearing the end of the season, we deal with the whole Moreland and Moriarty situation, because we haven't circled back to that yet. So, well, and like I say, in the long run, we'll just have to wait and see. I'm very interested to see what goes on in the next episode. Once again, I do apologize. Just kind of, like I said, hopefully future recordings won't have all of this going on. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. So next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good